Good evening. My name is Rick Spears. Welcome to this webinar on well maintenance organized by the Lake Stewardship and Environmental Committee of McKellar Township. Our speakers tonight will be Trish Luty and Kyle Smith of the Ontario Groundwater Association. Our moderator for questions after the presentation will be Steve McDonald from the Manitowoc Lake Community Association. Please write your questions in the chat. Trish Luty is the General Manager of the Ontario Groundwater Association and has been a passionate advocate for Ontario's groundwater industry since joining the association. She works closely with government, industry partners, and members to promote education, collaboration, and regulatory progress across the sector. Known for her engaging presentations and deep understanding of industry challenges, Trish is dedicated to supporting professionals in the field and advancing awareness of groundwater as a vital natural resource. Kyle Smith is the president of the Ontario Groundwater Association and has volunteered with the association since 2016. He is a graduate of Fleming College's Natural Resources Drilling and Blasting program and has been a licensed well technician in Ontario since 2009. He has contributed to groundwater investigations in Canada, the United States, South America, and Bermuda. Kyle is also a project manager at Aardvark Drilling Incorporated, where he has managed a multitude of well construction, rehabilitation, and abandonment projects for 15 years. Thank you for coming, Trish and Kyle.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Let me just share my presentation. Guys, one moment. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us again for another little webinar presented by the Ontario Groundwater Association on drinking water-wise. So I'll get started with just a quick overview of the history of the Ontario Groundwater Association. In 1952, the province mandated the water well record filing for all new wells. As a result, the water well drillers organized, and the first meeting was held in Tillsonburg, Ontario in 1952. As a result, the Ontario Water Well Association was created as a not-for-profit organization, and it was later changed to the Ontario Groundwater Association to better facilitate various sectors of the groundwater industry coming together for the delivery of safe and clean water supplies throughout the province. So today we'll be just going over some essentials of well ownership and maintenance for clean drinking water. We hope that this will empower residents to gain some practical knowledge about their wells and water safety. Some topics we'll be covering are common types of wells in Ontario, a few things about why well maintenance matters, the importance of regular care for your well, a brief introduction into well records, some key information on those well records, some potential signs, well issues that you might experience, physical well maintenance tips, and some resources, of course, for you all. So we'll start with what is groundwater? A modern well is more than just your kind of typical hole in the ground. It's a precisely engineered system designed to access, protect, and sustainably draw from groundwater beneath your feet. Groundwater is the water that fills the tiny spaces and fractures between our soil, sand, and rock beneath our surface. And the water table is the area that marks the top of a saturated zone. Below this level, all spaces are filled with water. Water wells are drilled below the water table into an aquifer where the water is found, and geologic layers of permeable materials such as sand, gravel, or fractured rock that store and transmit this groundwater. So in Ontario, our wells typically draw from a confined aquifer, which is pressurized and protected, or an unconfined, which is closer to the surface, depending on your local geology. And we'll get into the specifics of McKellar in just a moment. As water is pumped from a well, the water table may temporarily lower and then gradually recover as the aquifer recharges. The groundwater moves slowly through aquifers, driven by gravity and pressure differences, typically only a few meters per year. Recharge areas are where precipitation and surface water seep down through the soil. To replenish aquifers, these zones are vital for maintaining water supply and aquifer health. The rate and direction of flow depend on soil type, rock structure, and elevation, making groundwater movement complex and highly site-specific. So we've got a nice little diagram here of kind of how groundwater flows through a recharge area, noting that it goes through an infiltration and percolation into the water table, flowing kind of into your groundwater area. And then just to the right is another little image of kind of the different layers of confined and unconfined aquifers, just showing how you can kind of permeate different layers to reach different aquifers. Why groundwater is vulnerable to contamination? Because it moves very slowly and pollutants can persist for decades once they enter the subsurface. Many contaminants leaking from fuel tanks, septic tanks, fertilizers, road salts, and improper well construction can infiltrate recharge zones and migrate towards wells. Unconfined aquifers are most at risk because they are directly exposed to surface infiltration. So protecting our recharge areas, maintaining our well integrity, and managing our land use are essential to preserving our safe drinking water. So what does groundwater look like in McKellar Township specifically? Groundwater in McKellar moves through shallow sand, gravel, and fractured bedrock aquifers that are directly connected to nearby lakes and wetlands. Because these systems are made shallow and permeable, local land has a very direct influence on groundwater quality. We have septic systems. Aging and poorly maintained systems can release bacteria, nutrients, and household chemicals into the soil. These contaminants can then travel through our groundwater and reach our wells, streams, and lakes. We have shoreline development, increased of hard surfaces such as driveways, roofs, patios, roads, reduced natural infiltration and increased runoff. And then removing any native vegetation near these shore areas decrease the soil's ability to filter pollutants before they reach groundwater or the lake. We've got our chemicals in lawn care that we know about, pesticides, fertilizers, de-icing salts that can all leach into our groundwater, and as well as construction and land alteration. The groundwater in McKellar specifically is shallow and closely connected to the lakes, making it very sensitive to kind of land use. So we just want to make sure that we're taking care of our groundwater specifically through that. Another little map that easily shows how water can move downward through the soil and rock to recharge aquifers beneath McKellar. The red and dark orange areas represent zones of high groundwater recharge potential, meaning water from rainfall and snow melt can infiltrate the ground quickly and replenish the aquifer more effectively. These areas are typically characterized by sandy soils, thin overburden or permeable geology, a lot of loose rocks, gravels, and sand, which make it a lot easier for everything to filter through. The yellow areas have low to moderate recharge potential, often due to clay-rich soils, shallow bedrock, and poor drainage, which limit how much water seeps down into the groundwater system. As you can see, McKellar is largely in a high recharge zone, so residents have access to good groundwater supplies. But it also means that the area is more vulnerable to contamination. Surface spills, septic leakage, chemicals can move very rapidly down towards the aquifers. So there's a hidden link between groundwater and surface water, clearly. Groundwater and surface water are part of the same continuous system. Water moves freely between aquifers, wetlands, and lakes. We've got base flow to lakes and streams. Groundwater seeps into our lakes and rivers year-round, providing a steady surface of cold, clean water that supports fish and aquatic life. When groundwater becomes contaminated, these pollutants directly enter our surface water bodies. Nutrients such as nitrates and phosphorus from septic systems or fertilizers can travel underground and emerge in nearshore zones, fueling algal blooms and reducing water clarity. Then there's also thermal and chemical balance. Groundwater helps regulate lake temperature and maintain water chemistry, both essential for ecosystem stability. Oh, sorry. Reduced recharge or altered flow patterns can impact lake levels and habitat quality. So we need to make sure we're protecting our connection between groundwater and lake water by maintaining vegetated buffers along shorelines to filter runoff. Groundwater and surface water are just one connected system. So what happens underground affects our lakes and streams. Groundwater provides our steady flow, keeping our lakes oxygen rich. If our groundwater becomes contaminated, pollutants can move very directly into that surface water. Yeah. Healthy recharge zones are kept by those vegetated areas, and we need to make sure we keep up regular septic maintenance to reduce our chemical use that will enter into our clean water through our lakes. So what is a well? Wells can vary in construction, depth, water source, and susceptibility to contamination, all of which influence their performance and maintenance needs. Some wells tap into deep confined aquifers, offering reliable water year-round, while others rely on shallow groundwater, making them a little bit more vulnerable to seasonal changes and surface contaminants. And so we'll go into just a few of our different types of wells that we have, specifically in Ontario, which are drilled wells, our most common types of wells. Drilled into our bedrock could be about hundreds of feet. We've got our dug wells common in a lot of older properties. Often older ones were even dug by hand. They're often very shallow and wide. We have bored wells constructed using a boring machine. These wells are also shallow but reinforced with concrete tiles. And we'll go into a few images and more details into these in just a moment. We've got our shore wells, which are constructed close to shorelines of lakes, rivers, streams, typically accessing shallow groundwater of nearby water bodies. And we have sandpoint driven wells, which are constructed by driving small diameter pipes fitted with a screen directly into sandy gravel soil, usually about less than 25 feet. I've got a lovely complex and a little bit of a less complex kind of image of the very detailed engineering that goes into a modern pump. A modern well, along with the pump and everything that goes into its construction. So we'll go into some of the key components of a modern well here. Your well casing, also known as kind of the backbone of your well, made from strong PVC or steel pipe that runs deep into the ground. Its job is basically twofold. First, it acts as the structural liner, preventing the surrounding earth, or what we call the borehole, from collapsing. Second, critically for your health, it's the first line of defense as it seals off the valuable aquifer, the water-bearing rock, and from any potential surface contamination like fertilizers, pesticides, or runoff. Right up on top of the well, we have a well cap. Don't let its simplicity fool you. It's one of the most important sanitary barriers. This is a sealed cover that prevents anything from getting in, no insects, critters, debris, and especially no dirty surface water dripping in from the top. You'll often notice that the well cap is vented. This isn't a leak. It's necessary to equalize the air pressure inside of the well. We have the pump and drop pipe. So the pump is kind of the heart of the system. For most deep wells in the area, you'll have a submersible pump. As the name suggests, it lives underwater, deep inside of the well casing. It's designed to push the water up. That water is pushed up through a drop pipe and into your plumbing. The whole assembly is engineered to provide a steady, reliable flow of water, ensuring you don't lose pressure when you turn on a faucet. If you happen to have a very shallow well, you might instead see a jet pump instead closer to the surface. But the submersible model is standard for most modern installations. Deep inside the well, right where the casing meets the water-bearing rock, we'll find a well screen. This part is essentially a specialized filter. It's critical because the water in the aquifer isn't always perfectly clear. The screen's job is to keep out fine particles such as sand, silt, and sediment while only allowing clean groundwater to flow into the well. Grout seal. This component is invisible once the well is finished, usually. It's absolutely vital for its safety. The grout seal is also known as the annular seal. Around the well casing, there'll be a space that's caused as we drill through the earth, and that space is generally called an annulus. We fill this gap with a special material, usually a bentonite clay or cement-based grout. The seal is poured from the surface all the way down, creating a watertight barrier. It prevents any contaminated water near the surface from seeping down the outside of the casing and into your clean water supply. It's a permanent seal for peace of mind. And finally, we have a pressure tank, which is often in a basement or well house if you have one of those. This is a critical piece for the longevity of your pump and the quality of your water use. It acts as a storage buffer. When you use a small amount of water, say a quick hand wash, the tank provides that water on demand and maintains pressure. This prevents the electric pump from having to turn on and off constantly. This regulates the pump cycling dramatically and reduces wear and tear on that expensive submersible pump. So what do they look like? We have here a kind of a cross-section of a drilled well and a little, just an image of a typical drilled well with that cap there. It's a small diameter casing, typically a narrow vertical steel or PVC pipe, about 4 to 10 inches in diameter that sticks up about 40 centimeters above the ground. We have a sealed well cap, usually metal or plastic cap, sitting directly on top of a narrow casing. And our casing is continuous and sealed with concrete base bentonite grout up to the surface. We then have, again, a cross-section and image of a bored well. It's larger in diameter and shorter, kind of looks like a manhole, often about 3 to 4 feet wide. Casing is often made of concrete rings, stone, or brick, and may be visible just beneath a lid or cover. It's usually accessing shallow groundwater and more susceptible to surface runoff as it has a more rudimentary or simple cover like a concrete slab that you can see here. We've just got some images here of inside of a hand dug well and another bored well. And then here we've got a shore well and a sandpoint well, usually found near a body of water such as river, lake, or large pond. They can be a dug well, large in diameter, kind of like the image on the left, or a shallow driven point well, placed close to the shore, like the one on the right. And then we've just got a couple images here of some non-compliant wells. You can kind of see that the well cap is cracked and loose and missing, has some definite openings that are available for any kind of contaminants to get down to that groundwater. And then here we've got another little cross section of a private well. It's again a bit of a larger diameter well. You can see the cap must be sealed. Casing must be a standard of about 40 centimeters above the ground. It's got proper mounding to ensure that it's draining away from the well casing, which is essential. This dark kind of greenish gray is our grout seal, which is our concrete bentonite or clay kind of seal there. At the bottom, we can see that there is a clean sand and gravel filter. This material surrounds the bottom of the casing, naturally filtering the water. And then here we've got a couple more images of some proper well caps and covers and some improper well caps and covers. All right, so what are well records? A well record is kind of like the birth certificate of your well. It captures all of the technical details about how and where it was built. It's required under Regulation 903, which is under the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. And all licensed drillers are licensed under that regulation. Keeping this record is vital for maintaining your well, diagnosing issues, and ensuring compliance if you sell your property. Ontario's well records are publicly accessible through the MECP website. If you know your well tag number, it's easy to locate. If you can't find one, the ministry can assist, or a licensed contractor or the OGWA can help identify or update your record. Again, keeping a copy on file ensures you always have access to vital information about your water source. So we'll get into a little bit of the details of what's on a well record, and I'll let Kyle get into the specifics of the well record specifically. But a well record contains everything from the well's design and performance, the type of casing and screen, to the aquifer depth and water yield. It also includes kind of driller credentials. So I'll let Kyle take over describing some of our well records that we have here.
Yeah, thanks, Trish. So this document, as Trish alluded to, the map that the Ministry of Environment has online, it's one of the most advanced recording systems in the world. There's lots of places in the States and Canada that don't have nearly as good of a recording system as Ontario does. So we're really fortunate. Big things to look at are where the water was found. And then the pump test is on the next slide. There's really good information there. Once the well is constructed, this 1 hour pump test that we're mandated to do can really give you a lot of information about how your wells is going to perform. And one thing I like to always say is, we make the hole, we don't put the water there. There's lots of areas in Ontario that, you know, you're just unlucky and you don't have a lot of good water. That being said, we're very fortunate on a world scale to have so much fresh water beneath our feet. This pump test is recorded by the drilling contractor, and it sets the limits. It's almost like a cruise control for your car, but it's for your well. The well contractor will typically overexert the well through these tests and try to get the maximum performance. But then where we see recommended pump rate, that's where we don't want to redline our well. We want to keep it within that happy spot for, you know, maximum fuel economy and keep the well performing as it did that first day of drilling for its life. Typical life of a drilled well is usually about 70 years, and the only thing that really rates that is the steel casing that they're generally constructed with is rated to last about 70 years that we use now. There's some things that we can do to extend that. Trish talked about the mounding around a well. I'm going to say 98% of the wells that I drive past and I see do not have mounding around them. That very top portion where it meets the soil or the ground is where they rot out, and then your well's done. Or we can cut and weld extensions. It gets very costly. A mound around your well will allow the steel casing to last at least another 10 years. So if you don't have a mound around your well, it's going to buy you another 10 years. And 10 years from now, I'd imagine a new drilled well will be a lot more than 20 grand. Might get into the 30, 40s if we keep going up in price with fuel and steel and all that and equipment. Yeah, so the well records are excellent sources of information. If you're selling your home, you're going to want to have this, and you can access it either by search fields, like Trish said, search the tag number if you have one, but there's also an interactive map. So you can kind of zoom in on your property. A lot of these well records, like the one that's shown now, are pretty historical. They're old, so they didn't really have GPS. So always check the maps that are associated on the well records. I really liked ages ago when we had the hand-drawn maps from the drillers, because they would get creative and really put landmarks and stuff that you can refer to. More modern ones, there's online submission now, so you get a Google Maps image with a pin on it, but the landscape can change. I like these hand-drawn maps. So anytime, even if it looks like that blue dot is on your property, make sure you check those maps, because the summer students that input these into the ministry database, I always say there's a lot of Friday afternoon ones that don't exactly get inputted perfectly. The well records will tell you lots of things. What the geology is. So this one that's showing now, brown sand, brown sand. This is a shallow well. One thing to keep in mind in Ontario, the shallower the well, the more susceptible it is to contamination. But if constructed properly, a shallow well will have better water quality as far as softness and less mineral intrusion. We were an ocean, so there's certain parts in Ontario where if you drill too deep, we do get salt water. There is salt water down there. So if you can access shallower and in overburden rather than bedrock, it can be better. McKellar Township, you get lots of sand pockets through the granite. Most wells will be in the granite in McKellar Township, but if you're lucky enough to have, let's say, 50 feet of sand and gravel, it's essentially a spring well. It's really good soft water. That's kind of where we want to be, and you can learn that from the well records. This one here is more for rather than domestic consumption, is actually for a background study. Lots of landfills, they're mandated by the ministry to monitor the groundwater flowing in and flowing out of the areas. So this record, we can jump to the map that's attached. We can see some landfill activity. And they'll do this before the landfill is even constructed. They'll do it during and after construction of the landfill to monitor, make sure there's no leachate or anything getting down. And one thing we see a lot now is pharmaceuticals. Please do not put pharmaceuticals into your septics. Make sure they're disposed of properly, because they do get into our groundwater, and I don't want to be taking Trish's pills and she doesn't want to be taking mine. This one's one we see fairly typical. If you've got a well in McKellar, you've got gravel and sand, and then we're into granite bedrock. And drilling in granite, obviously groundwater doesn't flow through solid rock. So you're always looking for that fracture. And some are high producing, some produce mineralized water. It's just whatever's been trapped in there since before the dinosaurs. Through the drilling process, before the pump test is completed, typically drillers will develop the well for an hour. So they would encounter a fracture in that granite and then blast that zone with high pressured air to clear out any stuff that's in there that may affect the pumps, because pumps are expensive. We don't want to suck them full of gravel. In this one, you can see the pump test is really, really good. On the right column in the pump test, the static water level is when the well's not being used, the groundwater level comes up. On this one, it's 6.4 meters. And after pumping this well at 20 gallons a minute, it drew the well down, the water level down to 23 meters. So the contractor, the well technician, is recommending 15.1 gallons per minute. And then that well should be happy forever. For years and years, the basic demand that we always wanted to get out of a well was 10 gallons a minute. That typically sustained every normal household. Now people are building bigger households. We get into a lot of multi-generation households where you have several families living in. So 10 gallons a minute in most cases isn't enough anymore, just because we pump more.
All right, thanks, Kyle. We'll go into some of the problems that we can see with wells. So changes in our water pressure, taste, or appearance are often our early warning signs of a problem. Low water pressure might come from a pump wear or sediment buildup in the pump. We get odors. Typically, people describe rotten egg smells that can be signs of bacteria or hydrogen sulfide. Discoloration may mean mineral disturbances or corrosion. If your tap is sputtering air or the pump runs frequently, the well may be drawing air due to a leak or failing water level. So always investigate early. Small issues can lead quickly to bigger repairs, very costly repairs, and more importantly, unsafe water. Got some very basics of some well disinfection. Well disinfection helps control bacteria after any work or contamination event. always make sure to use unscented bleach and follow disinfection guidelines that are specifically either through the public health units, or you can contact one of our one of the OGWA technicians to help you out with any kind of specific disinfection as well. Pour it down the well, recirculate it through each tap until the chlorine smell is there. Let it sit overnight specifically. Make sure to flush it until the smell disappears. So always make sure to calculate the chlorine dosage very carefully, and making sure to calculate the diameter, depth, and water levels needed. Make sure to prepare properly. Store enough clean water for your household for at least 12 hours while the system is off. Make sure to circulate and wait very specifically. Let it stand for 12 to 24 hours. Ensure that you flush your system thoroughly. After the contact time, start the pump and discharge the chlorinated water safely away from vegetation or water courses, and just to ensure that we're making sure we're keeping our water sources safe. And then always make sure to test post-disinfection. Wait at least 48 hours to sample that water to make sure that you have the correct lab samples for testing. Kyle, do you want to add any specifics about disinfection?
Yeah, Public Health Ontario has some good guidelines, and they give you solution mixing. They tell you how to dose it, but they don't tell you the step-by-steps how to do it. If you hire a licensed contractor, they're going to bring a very large truck with the chlorinated solution. Add that to your well using a tremie pipe. So that means it gets to the bottom first and then pumps it up the well. We see a lot of people doing it themselves where, oh, they get a fresh jug of bleach and they pour it down the well, and eventually their pump fails and we cannot retrieve the pump because that chlorine has contacted the brass in the pitless adapter. It's contacted the dry steel well casing. You can really do a lot of damage if you're not doing it the right way. Another thing that a lot of people have issues with is if they dose their well, they think, let's just run the taps for, a few hours and we'll be fine. And then a week or so later, maybe a month later, their septic doesn't work because we just poured all that chlorinated solution down the drains into our septic, and we've killed all the active bacteria in our septic systems, which can get fairly costly. Have to pump it, pretty well start from fresh. So with disinfection, it's got to be done. Do it if you have a well that's influenced by seasonal flows. I get a lot of people saying, oh, in the spring I get odors from my well. Yeah, you'll get runoff and odors if it's influenced. But the best way is to get a licensed contractor. They'll come with a giant tank of that solution. They'll put it in your well, and then they will pump it back into another tank and dispose of it properly rather than, like I said, pump it into your own septic system. And they'll use tremie pipes to get it down past any of that vital fittings or well casing so that you're not reducing the life of your well. Like I said, they're supposed to last 70 years. They cost about $20,000, maybe even more now, depending on how deep you need to go. So that's something we want to protect our investment. And it may seem like a lot to get a licensed contractor out for $1,000, but if it saves you 10 years of that well, it's definitely worth it.
Absolutely. Thanks for filling that in. So we'll go on to some of those seasonal changes that require some extra care. Seasonal changes can stress your well system. In the winter, it's best to insulate or heat kind of any exposed lines or drains from unused systems to prevent any cracks or burst pipes. Each spring, inspect for damage. Make sure you're disinfecting that well with hopefully a licensed well contractor, and testing for bacteria before drinking any of that well water. After any major flooding, it's safe to assume that there could be some contamination. Floodwaters carry surface bacteria into the aquifers, so wait until floodwaters recede, disinfect, and perform a lab test before resuming use of that well. So when to call a licensed contractor? Our Ontario licensed well contractors are trained and certified under the Regulation 903. They can safely diagnose and repair well pump and pressure system problems while protecting groundwater from contamination. Homeowners should never attempt structural repairs or decommissioning themselves. These activities must meet strict regulatory standards. Regular maintenance and professional inspections help extend the well life, as Kyle mentioned, and ensure that you keep your water safe. Keeping contaminants out, protecting our drinking water at the source. Groundwater is only as clean as the land above it. Septic tanks that leak, fuel spills near garages, or excessive lawn chemicals can all seep into the soil and into our water table. In northern regions like McKellar Township, we have shallow bedrock and thin soils, which means that our contaminants can travel very quickly into our wells and lakes. Even road salt and spring runoff can change our groundwater chemistry. So recognizing the risks is a first step to protecting your well. And prevention is always easier than a cleanup. So we've got some do's and don'ts here for our homeowners, like maintaining safe distances between wells and septic systems. We've talked about our mounding to make sure grounding our wells, mounding around our wells, and secure our well-proof well cap. Make sure that that is always kind of kept in compliance, making sure it's always got no cracks in it. Inspect our pump and septic systems regularly. Make sure to store fuels, oils, and chemicals safely in sealed secondary containments away from the wells. And use environmentally friendly lawn and garden care. We've got our routine well maintenance tips that we just kind of talked about here. So why testing matters, of course. Water that appears clear and tastes fine can still harbor hazards. The Ontario Public Health site emphasizes that the standard bacterial tests will cover chloroform and E. coli, both indicators that surface water is getting down into your system. But those tests don't cover everything. They don't cover chemicals, metals, or other contaminants. So one clear result doesn't necessarily always guarantee safety, and you may want to take some proactive protection. Annual bacterial testing is a must for every private well owner. While bacterial testing is widely available through those public health units, testing for the other contaminants, like I talked about, chemicals and metals, may require other resources. Nitrate testing is especially important for families with young children or infants or pregnancy. If you notice any staining, odor, or taste changes, run a full chemical test to identify any possible causes. So where to test that water? Like, again, we talked about the public health units, and we're going to cover some of the more accredited water labs as well. So you have the North Bay Perry Sound District Health Unit for free bacterial testing. We've got the North Bay location as well as the Perry Sound location. So that's for all the McKellar residents. You can visit their website for more details on sampling schedules and drop-off hours, and that's the website right there at myhealthunit.ca. And then for the more chemical or metal testing, we would want to go to a more licensed private lab. At the bottom there, I've also got a contact for the laboratory directory. It's got a lot of great information on your laboratory submissions if you've got some questions about that as well. So labs such as Testmark and My Water Quality, which are both members of the Ontario Groundwater Association, offer expanded testing services. There's many others to choose from as well that you can access. But these testing services will test for nitrates, metals, and other potential contaminants that can affect taste, odor, and health. They provide professional sampling kits, clear instructions, and very reliable turnaround times. Working with an accredited professional, whether for maintenance, troubleshooting, or testing, helps ensure your well system meets Ontario regulations and remains safe for long-term use. So here we've just got a sample of one of those public health unit forms that you would send in with your water sample. The Public Health Ontario provides thresholds for bacterial indicators on E. coli, a strong signal of contamination. The total chloroforms over the guideline require action. So anything that shows over guidelines would require action and would be adverse. For chemical and metal results in the homeowners must compare values to Ontario guidelines levels, and if exceeded, consult professionals. Storing past reports will help identify trends or emerging problems of your well. So again, testing regularly and keeping all of those records is very important to the health of your well. When test results show problems, the right treatment really depends on the specific contaminant, well installation, usage, and your local geology. So a licensed well professional can really help you interpret your results and design a treatment system that meets the Ontario standards. And we'll go into a little bit about well water versus lake water, kind of understanding the differences that the average McKellar homeowner might see in there. In McKellar and surrounding communities, residents rely on a mix of drilled wells and lake intakes. Each system can be safe and reliable, but both demand proper care and testing. So knowing about your water source and how it's affected by weather, land use, and seasonal conditions would be very important to your groundwater and the health of your well. We've got our lake water. It does have some risks. Surface water is open to the environment, meaning anything on the landscape can wash in. Runoff from land, septic systems, and roads can raise the bacterial counts or turbidity. Groundwater, by contrast, moves slowly through subsurface layers, filtering out some of those contaminants by picking up dissolved minerals or metals. Both systems need monitoring to ensure safety, though. For filtration, there's really no one size fits all for either of these systems. So again, just making sure you look to one of the licensed well technicians to help you kind of create a system for yourselves. McKellar's landscapes includes forests, cottages, shoreline properties. Protecting your source means controlling what goes into the ground and water. A healthy shoreline buffer and regular septic maintenance are simple, effective defenses. Professionals can help ensure your water system meets Ontario standards and is sized for your household. So seek expert advice before buying or modifying treatment systems. So what can you do to protect your water today? Homeowners don't need to manage their systems alone. The Ontario Groundwater Association directory connects you with many licensed professionals who follow our Ontario regulatory standards. The North Bay Parry Sound Health Unit will help you out with any of that free bacterial testing and help you interpret those results. For treatment or repairs, always use certified professionals who can understand both groundwater and surface water challenges in your area. For any local septic needs or specific septic providers, we recommend visiting our reciprocal association, the Ontario On-Site Wastewater Association's website, where you can find a professional easily. Regulation 903 kind of governs all of our water well activities in Ontario, from construction to repair and abandonment. Licensed contractors must follow it, which is why professional help is essential. If your well predates modern standards, it can still be brought into compliance with proper sealing, extensions, or upgrades. So just remember that safe wells protect not just your household, but also the community. Again, there's a wonderful list on our website where you can locate either a map or an actual directory of all of our professionals. So just visit our Ontario Groundwater website to help you with any routine inspections, disinfection, pump and casing repairs, well upgrades, or proper decommissioning. And lastly, a little homeowner checklist here for you. Simple steps really make a difference. Start by knowing exactly where your systems are. It's surprising how many homeowners don't. The well records tell you depth, casing, and construction details. So make sure you access your well record and have one on hand. Annual testing and visual inspection of your wellhead are key to spotting issues early, and we encourage the residents to keep copies of any testing or service visits. They're valuable for tracking trends and your property's resale. So before we move on to any questions, I just want to leave you with a few key takeaways. McKellar's groundwater is a shared resource. It connects all the wells, wetlands, and lakes into one continuous system. Because our aquifers are shallow and close to the surface in McKellar, every septic system, fuel tank, and shoreline property has a role to play in keeping that water clean. Test your water at least once a year, maintain your septic system, and protect your wellhead from runoff. And these are simple but powerful actions that you can do to safeguard your home and your community. If you're unsure about any of your water quality or your well's condition, feel free to reach out to the Ontario Groundwater Association or any of our licensed well contractors, your local health unit, or an accredited lab like we discussed today. Remember, safe groundwater isn't just about one property. It's about protecting the health of McKellar's lakes, wildlife, and the next generation who will rely on the same water. So thank you to everyone for taking time to learn and be a part of our protection effort. Your interest and care makes all the difference for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Trish. Thank you for preparing that and delivering it. There's so much good information there. I think there's going to be a recording that people can come back to for those finer details. And I guess this is my favorite time, is the questions. We can jump into that. I see them through the chat. We'll just go as they came in chronologically. The first questions: we occasionally get air coming out of our taps. Could this be a problem with the well? There are areas in McKellar where we will have dissolved gases in wells. If we're using them regularly, we don't really see an issue. But say it's a cottage that you use on the weekend and you come back to it, and that Friday night you get to the cottage and yeah, there's air blowing out of your taps. What will happen is dissolved gases in some groundwater only come out once it's disturbed. So from the pump to your pressure tank, if it's constantly moving, you won't get those bursts of air. But if you pump the water into your pressure tank, let it sit there for a week, the gases will come out of that water. So you'll have air in that pressure tank at the top that once you start using it, it'll start blowing those blasts of air. That being said, there's some gases that can be very dangerous. Hopefully, it's something inert. There are uh, dual bladder pressure tanks that will gas that off so that it doesn't get into your breathing space at the taps. I would definitely check to see if it is gas. If it's a sulfur gas, it could be inert. But if it's something like methane, obviously we can fill a space and either asphyxiate or have an explosion hazard. So there's a few things that can happen, but typically it's those dissolved gases if it sits for a while, or an air intrusion above ground. But you would see short cycling on your pump, because if the air is getting in, that means the water is getting out. I hope that answered that question. The next one, a neighbor drilled a well that was shallower than ours, but had to frack to get water. Will that affect our well? I'm going to say no. In McKellar, we're mostly granite. We don't frack wells that are in overburden, only granite. So I talked about earlier the small fracture that you find. If your well is much deeper than your neighbor's, maybe the driller went much deeper and found different fractures that didn't need fracking. A good practice, like maybe your driller did here, was find that shallower water, spend $4,000 on fracking, and it can improve their yield out of a low producing fracture. I would say that it wouldn't really affect your well, because we do subdivisions that are all on drilled wells and septic, 1 acre lots. Some are much smaller, so each home has a well. There's pockets in southeastern Ontario where you will have to frack each well in the subdivision just so that you can get maybe even 5 gallons a minute of good water there. So typically hydrofracking for water wells, they jam it up to, less than 5,000 PSI with water pressure. It's not like the oil field where they're fracking and those fracks will actually fracture rock for hundreds of meters. So I don't think it will affect your well. Next question, coliform count was 3 when tested our well water a few weeks ago. Should we get an ultraviolet system? My advice is fix your well. If there's coliform in your well, then there's an issue. We can fix that. There are ways to fix it. Most of the time, and 90% of the time, that coliform's not coming from your well. It's coming from something else in the system in your home, in the aerator in your tap, or your plumbing system. So test multiple times. If I got a count of 3, I would be sending a sample in the very next day. I would take a disinfecting wipe. I would wipe down that tap that I'm taking it from and try to keep that sample as true to the source as possible. Use an outside tap that does not go through any treatment. Don't use bathroom sink taps or kitchen taps, because spray from toothpaste or A food from washing the dishes can affect that sample and give you a hit count of 3. Sometimes it's challenging. I sample a lot of wells that are totally perfect, no bacteria, but it's weeks before we figure out how to get a clean sample in the house. They're so fragile. So 3 is not too much of an issue, but go to the well. If you can get a licensed contractor, put a test pump in that well, get the water directly from the well, make sure your source is good. During the presentation, Meharg Drive, I'm familiar with it, and I checked out a bunch of well records. They're all granite wells. We had another one of our member contractors that drilled 900 feet not far from there, and they got no water. It's about finding that crack in the granite. If you can have something fractured, that's a good test. But installing a cistern, granite's tight. If you look at a rock cut on the side of the highway and there's not one crack in it, there's no water there. It's luck of the draw. Some people believe in well witchers. I'm more science-based. But sounds like you've got the best system that your property could offer with a cistern. Maybe those old wells, if you wanted to give a crack at it, have them cameraed by a licensed contractor, and if maybe we can identify some fractures that a hydrofrac would be beneficial.
Hey, Kyle, that was my question. The other thing that we've done is we've connected, we put rain barrels in place. So we're collecting rainwater and putting them in the cistern. So, and we have the water tested. So the water's is good. We've got 3 filters and also a UV light on it. So right now the plan is to try and connect the well to the cistern, because it produces like 400 gallons at a time. And if it means I can transfer 400 gallons over, it's worthwhile. So.
Absolutely, a slow rolling pump. But as you described that to me, that's how we do it in Bermuda. There's a very thin layer of fresh groundwater. And in the country of Bermuda, we rely so much on cisterns. Unlike us here in Ontario, their whole basement is their cistern collecting rainwater. And then we have very slow running groundwater pumps dropping half a gallon a minute in there 24 hours a day. So while you're sleeping, you're still getting that volume. Wells are expensive.
Yeah. Well, since it started raining, we have a 2,500 gallon cistern, and we've had to haul absolutely no water. So, so we're getting a lot of rainwater, and it suits the purpose, and it's like we have very good pressure. So.
Good. If you want to throw your address into the chat, maybe I can do a little research and see if there's shallower zones. When selecting a contractor, always make sure that they're a licensed well contractor with the Ministry of Environment. Even better if they're a member of the Ontario Groundwater Association. As a lot of contractors get paid by the foot in a lot of domestic situations.
We used Conrad, and he was very good, because when they couldn't get any water, he refunded us the cost of the well. So
yeah, you chose an excellent. He's a member of the Ontario Groundwater Association, a very stand-up contractor who's been in business for years in your backyard. Unfortunately, sometimes there's just no water, and people will say, why don't you just go deeper? Paul Conrad is a smart enough man that he knows that if he goes any deeper, he's going to empty your pocket and give you an even less usable well as you find more mineral.
Yeah, we're down about 600 feet, and he finally said that there's no sense in me even going any further. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. Accountability on individuals on the septic. Call your bylaw, call your township if there's something. I know I cottage in Halliburton County where my parents live, and there were so many lake residents that their septics were right on the beach, you know, and made without any permits. Talk to your neighbors. How far can contaminants travel along groundwater and affect someone else's well or maintenance? Groundwater moves really quickly through sand and gravels. If you have a dug well, it can influence it a lot quicker. When we were talking with CBC and CTV this year about the droughts in Ottawa, the drilled wells, the water in a drilled well, especially in McKellar Township, in those deep granite wells, it's taken hundreds of years for that water to get down there, maybe even more. If we're in a well in a sand and gravel zone, it could take weeks or months. So that water, especially in deeper drilled wells, we don't affect it. It could have been generations before us that could have contaminated it, and by the time we extract it out of a well, the timelines need to connect. So it all depends on the geology and the construction of that well. If your neighbor's contaminants could be affecting your well, have it tested. Trish mentioned public health for bacteria. There's excellent laboratories in Ontario. Testmark's one of them. Another one that I really like using is mywaterquality.ca. I'll put that in the chat. Because what they do, it's very science-based, these laboratory tests, and mywaterquality.ca will test the water at a licensed lab, and then they'll decipher it for you so that you can understand it, which is half the battle sometimes. Yeah, there's from Jennifer. You had the public health only tests for 2 parameters. Good question. And unfortunately, all of the additional analytical testing, yes, you have to pay for. A lot of the labs will give you kind of a menu to check from, but there's words that I wouldn't understand. What's tannins? What's turbidity? So working with someone like Testmark Labs or mywaterquality.ca, they'll tell you not to check every box because, you know, one box will be $75, another will be $150 for each analytical test on your water. Can the aquifer change drastically over a 10-year period? Yes. So those deeper drilled wells in granite, you don't have to worry so much. Like I said, that water could have taken hundreds of years to get there. What we're learning on long-term studies is groundwater in Ontario is actually growing. Since thousands of years ago, we have had more precipitation and our groundwater resources are growing. What we do have in McKellar, as the bedrock goes up and down, you can get granite bowls. Sometimes they're a lake, sometimes it's filled with sand. So if that granite bowl and you have a well with a screen in sand depletes, it can happen very quickly in a perched aquifer. So a perched aquifer is it's not connected to the rest of the groundwater system. It's kind of isolated. So the more we use it or the more environment and precipitation affect it, absolutely. We've seen wells within a year change due to outside influences. How often should you change your pump? Answer is when it dies. We've pulled wells or pumps out of wells that were from the 50s and they finally went down. If you're in an area, and there are spots in the granite in McKellar where you get high iron content, it will actually plug up the screens on those well pumps and make them work really hard. So it's just an electric motor that'll wear out. If you have high mineralized water, I would say get a technician to come out once, maybe once every 2 years, depending on how bad it is. Because something as simple as knocking the rust off of that well pump screen could allow it to live for another 5 to 10 years. Pumps are getting pretty expensive for good high quality submersibles. You can be anywhere from $500 to $3,000 for a really good quality submersible pump. With our emergency preparedness, hopefully always be ready for 24 hours without water. But yeah, no need to replace your pump unless you're having issues, and that licensed well technician will pump it out. One thing they will also do that can give you a precursor to it dying is you check the resistance on the electricity. So knowing what pump you have, it'll have a standard from factory set of resistance. And if the ohms are different, then you can tell that your electric motor is starting to fade, and maybe that would be a time, but I don't change them till they go. I'm concerned about residential density. Is this a concern regarding my well and groundwater in my area? There's we're so fortunate in Ontario to have so much groundwater. Speaking about the areas with no groundwater, we have to go through a hydrogeological process to get approvals for subdivisions that may be on well and septic, even new builds sometimes, depending on the township. McKellar doesn't have that, so it's kind of the Wild West. To go poke a hole and hopefully you have enough water. If you're on one of those perched aquifers that I talked about, yes, there could be a real concern. The one beauty about testing your well, not only for quality, but those pump tests on the well records, those can be legal. So nobody can drain your well, but you have to have it recorded. If your water quality is fine and a landfill moves in next door and you have poor water quality now, they will say, well, how was it before? You have to be able to prove it. If you work with someone like My Water Quality or Testmark Labs, those are proof that your groundwater has been influenced, and the Canadian Water Quality Act will protect you on that. But you need that background information. So a pump test from a licensed contractor for volume and performance of a well, and then those analytical tests.
Yeah, that was my question there, Kyle, and it was you answer that. Like when I was down in Owen Sound, I know the municipality down there, they had your lot size is quite a bit larger than what we do up in McKellar here. And when we moved to McKellar, it's just residential. Like people are coming in. There's new builds coming in. The builds are getting bigger and bigger, as you already alluded to. Large amount of people living in those residents, not knowing their own flow rates, which you already decide or mentioned about your pumps, type deal. And I guess that becomes a concern when you are trying to suck water from a granite hole, right? So it's just one of the things there. But I'm really enjoying your talk tonight, and I'm learning a lot. So that's a good show.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert. And yeah, if there is a concern, I know, have it documented. Some of these giant mansions will fill just for a weekend with 30 people in an Airbnb, and everything's going all at once. We are fortunate, like I said, in granite aquifers, it's like throwing a tap in a river. And if too many people upstream are pumping that, yes, it can slow down the performance of your well. And having legal documentation, like pump tests, can protect you if you run into something. Near North Labs in North Bay will pick up samples in Parry Sound for testing. You bet they will. And there's lots of, I know sometimes it's at the public library, they'll have bottle drops. find those places, call public health. They are a lot more local than you think. The big labs are in the cities, but maybe we can talk to McKellar, get some at the township office. But those samples, get them when you can. Well, I fill my backpack when I go. I'll take 20 of them. They don't go bad until you use them. The public health water sample bottles, take 10 of them, have them on the shelf. And one thing to always keep in mind when we are rural is there's a tea time on those samples. So don't submit them Friday afternoon because they won't get picked up until the next Monday, and then they will throw that sample out. You'll get no results.
Yeah, ours are right by the Shoppers Drug Mart. You can pick up the sample bottles there, and it's Monday to Thursday that you drop them off, and it's got to be in before 4 o'clock. But usually, I dropped off a water sample at 3. It didn't go in until the next day. So I think they come earlier. It was supposed to be 4 o'clock, but it all depends on their route.
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
it's always safe to give it at least 24 hours before it's handled again.
So
Yeah,
and they're
Kyle?
quick. The results are, 48 hours later. You usually can phone in and get the sample results, and they'll mail it to you thereafter. So
Yeah, if you're going into the city where the labs actually are too, throw it in a cooler with an ice pack and put it right on their desk so they can feel it nice and cold.
Kyle?
Yep.
So that reference to Near North Labs, they do full chemical tests. That's not the health unit lab. That's a lab in North Bay that has couriers pick up in Perry Sound, and I know they do Point of Barrow. I don't know if they do McKellar, but they have a schedule on their website, and they'll do all the full chemical tests, equivalent similar to my water quality and the other ones.
Yeah,
So it's
there's
just-
so many. I'm kind of obligated just to mention our members' names. So
I understand that, but I'm just saying for people local here, it's a convenient option because I've dealt with some of the other ones before where they send you coolers and you're loading up things and everything else, and it's very expensive. They're a little more reasonable in North Bay.
oh, that's
That's great to
excellent.
know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, Candicon Labs in Barrie for sure. I could rhyme out some names, Paracel, Agate, Bureau Veritas. There's lots of labs that are
Agate's
accessible
one
for
I
sure.
dealt with before, and that was an experience.
Well, they typically deal with environmental technicians who are sampling contaminated sites, and yeah, it can get pretty intense.
Yes.
Like I said about sampling, you can throw your money away on $150 sample if you don't wipe your tap before taking it.
Yeah. And in my case, I did a question for you there. So right where the water comes into the house and before I don't have a pressure tank because I've got a variable pump, but right before anything, I've got a tap coming off the system. I would imagine that's probably the best way to sample from
Yeah.
it, right? It's right, it's direct to the wellhead from there, nothing else, and there's nothing ever connected to it.
Yeah,
I would think
that's
that would make the
definitely
most
it.
sense.
As close to the source as possible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
especially without treatment, there's lots of people, and there is a checkbox on the public health. Is this treated? I don't think there's much sense in sending in reverse osmosis water to a lab because you will know it's good. But going back to what I said before is find it at the source, fix the source. If the source is poor, don't put a UV light in. Try to fix it at the source because that day that your UV light stops working, you won't know and you will consume it or your loved ones will. Fix it at the source. Don't put lipstick on it.
Are you out of questions there, Kyle?
And that's everything in the chat. That was excellent. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you, Trish. It's awesome presentations you put together. And this is all extracurricular for Trish from her normal job. She's passionate about it, so she does it. And we're happy to support her as a volunteer group. And hopefully we can get the word out to McKellar and other townships that, like Trish said, it's a shared resource. So let's protect it together.
Well, I'd certainly like to thank you both, Trish Luty and Kyle Smith, for the thorough coverage of well maintenance tonight. It was so thoughtful of you to research the conditions that are particular to McKellar Township and giving us a very specialized presentation. And I'd like to remind everyone also that this video will be available for review on the McKellar Township webpage. And thanks again, Kyle and Trish.
Thank you, everyone, so much.
Okay. Take
And
care.
from the participant side, thank you as well.
Very good.
Yeah.
I'll end this now.
Let's
Have a
go
good
Blue Jays.
All right.
Take care.
Good night, everyone.
Right.
Thank you. Good night.